DC here. Hi, guys and gals. Well, hope you're all well. Yes, I'm under my my walnut tree. Yeah, and it's nice. It is not overly warm for once. It's like 23 Celsius. That's quite nice. And it's what they call seasonal weather. Yes. Yeah, you might actually hear some noise in the background. There's the neighbors next door that way, have a swimming pool. Well, one of these. I was almost going to say a big inflatable one. It's not actually inflatable. The ridge of it is, and it's the janitors actually of the apartment building next door. They always, well, quite often, every few years, they have a pool. So, like I say, have because it's not always been the same one, and they have their grandkids over or something like that. You know, there's a bit of a story with that next door, and I mean, it's like one of these things. Like, if you're neighbors to them, they're excellent neighbors, because the janitor over there, who's you could say the caretaker also of the apartment building, they take care of it with an iron fist. And I mean by that is that, well, basically, nobody except for themselves, will have a pool. Nobody except for their grandkids will play on the grounds. It's pretty much that's pretty much the way it is. I mean, they really keep it really clean. I can see it's a very tight ship. A lot of people move. Ends up basically in the end, there's mostly elderly people or members of their family, and like I say, they've got a pool in the back where their relatives come. So if you live there in the building, you probably wouldn't. If you had a family, I've known of one or two people that lived there with families, and they moved out after a while. But they kept mum on how it was. Interesting. But anyway, like I say, we get along really well with them. Not really well. We get along with them. We don't have any arguments of any types. We actually are very cordial. We've been neighbors for 28 years, and it goes very well. But I don't think that I would like to live in the building there. But when you're neighbors, it's a tight ship. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Yeah. So I actually really I can't say anything really negative as far as myself being a neighbor. Now, why have I talked about that for 8 minutes? Not 8 minutes, sorry, for 3 minutes. I don't know. I guess it's just because I was hearing the noise next door, and I saw a few moments before that the kids were playing in the pool and so on. Yeah. So today's Sunday. It was interesting. We were at church this morning, and the person that gave the message was a lady who was brought up in the Ivory Coast. She is, excuse me, she must be in her early to mid 60s, I'd say. And it's kind of interesting because she was going on about she was brought up in a Muslim family, so she was in that part of the Ivory Coast, so to say, because there's different religious districts, we could almost put it that way, over there. Some are animistic, some are Christian, and some are Muslim. And she was talking about her dad being some type of, I was almost going to say, tribal leader of some type. And I don't know if it was an exaggeration or what, but she said that her dad had something like 50 wives. Basically, he had a harem. And she was saying that her mom was like in the third league. There was different as she said, as she was telling us, there was different preferences, probably by the tribal group, and she was mentioning that. So anyway, she was going on about that and saying that if you don't believe that it can be managed, she was basically saying that the polygamy was managed, but almost like I was almost going to say almost like a village, I guess, in a way. Anyway, it was kind of interesting. That was not the core of the that was not the core of the message, but it came up. It was being used at one point as an image, and there is though one thing that she was saying that was interesting. I found. I mean, there was quite a few things, but one point that came up was about what we could almost call family traits, and how family traits sometimes, well, the positive ones nice, but the negative ones, how they kind of live on sometimes through the generations. It could be by, yeah, it could be just by seeing how your parents act, things like that. And I was wondering, got me wondering, like, do we have any particularly family traits that we had? And I was thinking of one, which I think, and I say it that way humbly, I think I managed to break a bit, but it was not an easy one. It was actually a certain bit of pride. Now, were my parents prideful? In a sense, they weren't, but I was almost going to say I think there was a little bit that chip on the shoulder type of thing. Now, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Is that my great grandparents on my dad's side. Now, this we're talking essentially from on my dad's side. Sorry, I should have stated that. My great grandparents were farmers, relatively modest. No, were modest, and my dad's family, they were very modest. I was going to put it that way. Probably lower than the other ones in the sense of probably money that they had, some of them at least, and people were trying very hard to elevate their social status. And by doing that, they would always talk highly of their achievements, if I can be nice. And made it actually, it came to create sometimes a type of situation where even amongst brothers and sisters, they would try and prove how well that they had done. An exception to that was my dad's brother. My dad wasn't too bad, and I say wasn't too bad. He wasn't as bad as his sister and another brother. They were like four. But, you still felt it. It was like this, to prove look, despite our extremely modest means, look how well we did. Look how, and I was like the first in the dynasty at the time to have gone to university. So my dad would talk about it. And I realized that actually there was things like that I would feel when I was also studying, how I would like to maybe show off, at one point or another, to friends of mine, where in my modest village. And something that probably went on until I was living in Switzerland, I think, at some times or another. But where it really started to change, and this I will say, is very much becoming, I was going to say becoming born again Christian. Now I'm going to qualify that before some of you jump through the window. But is it by realizing, that there are certain ways, how could I say, looking at that log in my eye, sometimes it's important, And am I better? Yeah, I am actually. I am better. Am I better all the time? No. But there are things like that happen, realizations, And when you realize, is it like a generational, use the word, is it a generational sin? Is it a generational trait? I kind of think it is, or was. And does it continue in my family? Well, I was going to say on a healthy way, yes, it is. You should be happy and proud of your achievements. It's just what you do with it and how you do with it that's important. And I think that is the whole thing: is where do you put that gratitude of how things went with your life? Where do you put it, and what is a healthy dose? A healthy doses of it's me, and a healthy doses of, well, I'm grateful to my circumstances. I'm grateful to Providence, and so on. This is a topic that could be going on for another 10-20 minutes, which I won't, because I will spare you of it. But maybe it's something you can think about yourself. Are there types of generational traits that continue to live on in you? And like I say, some are positive. Others might be alcoholism or drug abuse and things like that, or emotional abuse. So I mean, it goes both ways. And have you been working on getting rid of them, or are they just so trivial that it doesn't matter? Anyway, think about it. That's got me thinking. Anyway, so all this through a message from a lady that was at the church today, and there was more in her message, of course. And I'm not going to go on about it now anyway, because I've been chatting up long enough. That's it for today. DC signing off. Take care, everybody, and hope you have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.